So a quick review of what this example does. In this example, we have a writer application that is sending data, and that data is in one logical local area network. That data is being sent to a first routing service, which is filtering that data. So essentially, this first routing service is saying, I don't want every single temperature update to go over the wide area network. I'm only allowing temperature updates to go over the wide area network if the temperature is above 100 degrees or below 32 degrees. So this is actually doing filtering. So at this point, the filtered data is going across the WAN. The second routing service is then routing it into the second local area network, and the reader app is receiving it. So in these applications, the sending app is here on the left, so this is generating the data. Then there's routing service 1, which is actually doing the filtering of the data. Then our logical wide area network is here between routing service 1 and routing service 2. And this is then bridging that data to the receiver. And as you can see here, the receiver is only getting updates when the data is either above 100 degrees or below 32 degrees. So here it hits 101 degrees and then stops. So what we're going to do here is actually show you how you can update the filter that the routing service is using at runtime. So the routing service 1 here, we're going to update the parameters of that filter. So instead of only allowing data through when it's above 100 degrees or below 32 degrees, we're going to change it so it allows data through if it's above 75 degrees or below 45 degrees. So we'll see quite a bit more data going through. So the way that you update this data is using the routing service shell application. I'm going to open up a new console window in order to run the routing service shell. It's called rti_r_ssh.bat, and when I open it up, I need to tell it what domain to use in order to contact the routing service in order to update it. So to review again one other piece of this system, the routing service shell is running in a special administration domain. You could actually make this the same domain as the rest of your data, but it's a best practice to split these into multiple domains. So here, over the same local area network, but in a logically different domain, the routing service shell is going to be sending commands to the routing service in order to update that content filter at runtime. In this example, the domain ID for the special administration domain is 3, so I'm going to pass that as a parameter to the routing service shell. So we've started the shell, it's acting in the proper domain. Now let's actually send a command to the routing service. In this case, there are actually quite a few commands we could send to it, including commands for the routing service to disable itself, to unload its current configuration, to load an entirely new configuration, to re-enable itself afterward, and also to pause its execution and then resume it later if needed, or to update some of the configuration, which is actually what we're going to do right now. You can also create a new entity in the routing service, such as a new route between domains. You can actually do that dynamically. Or you can delete a route between the domains. You can also tell the routing service to save its configuration to a file, or you can get that configuration remotely. And you can add an initial peer to the routing service to give it a new address to contact. And of course, you can also exit the shell. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to update this routing service with a new configuration, and it's very, very simple. I don't even have to disable it in this case. I'm going to give it new parameters for the content filter to use. So this is the command to update this routing service with new filter parameters. I'm going to run the command and we'll see it work, and then I'll go through the details of what it actually means. So we can see here we got a result back from the routing service saying that it updated correctly. And then let's take a look here at our receiver. And at some point shortly, we should start seeing values that we would not have seen before. And here you can see we received 44, 43, 42, etc., which previously were being filtered out because we had a filter set up to not send data that was between 32 degrees and 100 degrees. Okay, now to take a little bit of a look at what we've actually done. So here is our command that we ran. Update router 1, data domain, session forward, temperature forward. So the first piece is fairly simple. When we started up our routing services, we specified that this one is router 1. This means it's using the router 1 configuration from the XML file. So if I scroll through this, here's the configuration for router 1. So this is what's going to be updated. The actual routing service application that's running this configuration. So now, as I scroll through this configuration, actually let me go back to the command. So inside of router 1, we say we want to update data domain, session forward, temperature forward. As I scroll through, I can see that there is a domain route here called data domain. So this is what is set up that's actually routing data from one domain to another. In this case, it's routing it from domain 6 to domain 0. So we have data domain, and then inside of data domain, there is a session, which is equivalent to a thread that's actually taking data from one domain and putting it into another. And this session is called session forward. We named it this way with a naming convention to indicate that it is going forward from participant 1 to participant 2. We have another session in this configuration called session backward, which routes data from participant 2 to participant 1. In this example, it's not being used, but it's in this file for completeness. So here, inside of data domain, session forward, we have a topic route called alarm forward. That's sending the alarm data. And we have another topic route called temperature forward. This is what's actually sending the temperature data. And if you recall, the alarm data is not being filtered, but the temperature data is being filtered. So here's our content filter here. If the value is greater than the first parameter, or if the value is less than the second parameter, then the data is going to get through. Otherwise, it's going to be filtered out. So here, the first parameter is 100, and the second parameter is 32 by default, but we have just sent an update that has changed those to be 75 and 45. So what we just looked at here, we looked at data domain, session forward, temperature forward. This is the actual path to the entity that we want to update. So here we can see this is the same path to the entity that we want to update that's in the XML configuration file. So here, data domain, : session forward, : temperature forward. This is the path to the topic route that we want to update. So that's the first part of it. The second part is this filter-update.xml and where we've written local. So filter-update.xml is an XML file that's been pre-created for you that contains the update to the filter parameters. So here, filter-update, it specifies there's a topic route, and on the input of that topic route, we have a content filter. We are not changing the filter, we're only changing the parameters to it. And so here we specify the new parameters that we want to update. So it's a very simple file, this filter update file. Now, if we look at the very last parameter to this command, it is the word local. This specifies that this XML file that's going to be the update is local to our shell. So in the real world scenario, the shell may be running on one machine and your routing service application will be running on another. So when you specify a file to use to update the routing service's configuration, it may be local to the shell, or it may be remote to the shell but local to the routing service. So in this case, we've specified this as local to the shell application. So it loads this XML file locally and then sends the update to the routing service remotely, although in this case it's all on the same machine. So here you can see that we've updated these filter parameters, and I'll show you again. It was a very simple command that we sent, and when we updated them, we're now getting data in ranges that we did not see before. In this case, this routing service shell is a pre-built application that's sending commands to the routing service, but all of this is done through DDS topics. And this is all described in the routing service user manual. So if you wanted to, you can actually create your own application that will do updates to the routing service configuration based on your own system parameters. You can do this at any time.